I'm Commander Sarah Mitchell, 36 years old, and I'm standing in a naval hall with 200 pairs of eyes fixed on me. My sister, the one who just told me I wasn't worthy enough to attend this ceremony, sits frozen in the front row, mouth hanging open. But to understand how we arrived at this moment, I need to take you back 15 years, back to when I first learned that loving someone sometimes means disappearing. I gave away $127,000 over those years. I turned down an MIT scholarship worth $180,000. I co-signed debt totaling $64,800. And when my sister told me I didn't belong in her world, I made a decision that changed everything. What Rebecca doesn't know is this. While she was busy bragging about being an officer's wife, I'd been an actual officer for the past 4 years. And my rank? 2 grades higher than her husband's. But before I tell you about that day, let me take you back 25 years, to when I first learned that love sometimes requires you to vanish. Jefferson Elementary Playground, September 1999. Rebecca wore a pink dress with white polka dots, her hair pulled into 2 braids that bounced when she ran. I was 11, perched on a swing with Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone propped against my knees, lost in Chapter 3 when I heard the scream. My name tore across the playground in a voice raw with panic. Rebecca was halfway up the 12-foot climbing structure, 1 foot slipping on wet metal. I dropped the book, spine cracking against concrete, and ran. My hands caught her waist 3 seconds before gravity would have introduced her skull to the pavement. She sobbed into my shoulder, small fists gripping my shirt collar. Words tumbled out between hiccups about how she loved me, about how I was her hero. I glanced back at my book, a sneaker print stamped across pages 42 and 43, the spine bent backward at an angle that promised it would never lie flat again. I didn't mention it. That day taught me my first lesson. Some things you put down, you never pick back up. 3 years later, our father died. Not peacefully, not expected, just a semi-truck that didn't see his sedan merging on I-5 near Tacoma. He left behind $47,000 in medical debt and a life insurance policy that had lapsed 6 months prior. Mom took 2 jobs, morning shift at Providence Hospital, evening shift at the Safeway on Market Street. She left the house at 5:30 and returned at 11, smelling like antiseptic and exhausted smiles. I was 14, Rebecca was 7. Breakfast became my responsibility. Peanut butter sandwiches for her lunch, check. Walk her to Wilson Elementary, check. Pick her up at 3:15, check. Dinner by 6, homework by 7, bedtime story by 8:30. Every night, I read to her, sometimes Harry Potter, sometimes Chronicles of Narnia, sometimes picture books she'd outgrown but still loved. Her favorite was The Giving Tree, which I found deeply ironic years later. One night, her voice slurred with sleep as I closed the book. When I grow up, I'm going to take care of you like you take care of me. I smiled in the darkness of her small bedroom, pulling the quilt up to her chin. You don't need to. I'll always be here. That promise became a noose I didn't recognize until it was already tight. Fast forward to Thanksgiving 2011. I was 23, finishing my senior year at Washington State with a 3.9 GPA in mathematics and economics. Rebecca had just turned 16, and the popular girls at Lincoln High had finally invited her into their circle. I drove home for the break, arriving Wednesday evening to find her practicing cheers in the driveway. She wore the burgundy and gold uniform like armor, her movements sharp and confident. 3 other girls stood nearby, chatting about some party the following weekend. I climbed out of my decade-old Honda Civic, waving. Rebecca saw me. Her entire posture shifted, shoulders rolling inward, smile dimming like someone had turned down a dial. She jogged over quickly, too quickly. You didn't need to pick me up, but you texted asking me to. I can get home on my own. One of the girls called out, That your sister? Rebecca glanced back. Just family. Not my sister. Not even Rebecca's sister. Just family. A category so broad it could mean anyone. I drove home alone, radio off, processing the distance in those 2 words. Mom noticed my silence over leftover turkey that night, asking if everything was okay. I told her yes because what was I supposed to say? That my baby sister was embarrassed of me? That the girl I'd raised was learning to erase me in real time? Mom patted my hand across the table. You know Rebecca's at that age where she needs space. It's normal. She's finding herself. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. 16-year-olds were supposed to be dramatic. This was temporary. A phase. Everything would settle once she matured. I was wrong. April 2012. I was 24, 3 weeks from graduation when the acceptance letter arrived. Full scholarship to MIT's graduate program in applied mathematics, tuition, stipend, housing covered for 2 years, $180,000 worth of opportunity wrapped in a single envelope. I called Mom first, then Rebecca. My sister's squeal of excitement felt genuine, warm. She promised to visit Boston, to explore the city together, to be proud of her genius sister. I started planning, apartment hunting online, researching the best coffee shops near campus, imagining a life where my choices belonged to me alone. July shattered that fantasy. Rebecca called at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. Her voice cracked between words, each syllable soaked in panic. She'd been accepted to St. Catherine University, her dream school since sophomore year. Private Catholic institution, small class sizes, exactly the environment she needed. The problem crystallized quickly. Tuition ran $32,000 annually. Mom and her savings could cover $14,000. Rebecca was $18,000 short for freshman year alone. My bank account held $23,400. 6 years of part-time jobs, every birthday check, every spare dollar from graduation gifts. The silence on the line stretched thin while my brain performed brutal mathematics. If I sent $18,000 to Rebecca, I'd have $5,400 left. Boston rent averaged $1,500 monthly. That gave me 3.5 months before homelessness. The MIT program started in 8 weeks. Rebecca's breath hitched on the other end. I'll figure something out, maybe community college first, then transfer. My mouth formed words before my brain could stop them. I'll handle it. Her relief exploded through the speaker. Oh my God, really? You're an angel. Seriously, you're the best sister in the entire world. She didn't ask how, didn't inquire where I'd find $18,000, didn't wonder if I had enough left over. The conversation ended with her excitement and my growing numbness. I sent the email to MIT's admissions office at 2:17 a.m. Formal, apologetic, final. I regret to inform you that due to unforeseen family circumstances, I cannot accept your generous offer. Professor Hendricks replied within 12 hours, Ms. Mitchell, is there anything we can do to help you reconsider? We rarely extend full funding and we believe you have exceptional potential. I never responded. What was I supposed to say? That my potential was worth less than my sister's happiness, that I'd been choosing her over myself since I was 11 years old and didn't know how to stop? The wire transfer cleared on a Tuesday. I took a job at Miller & Associates Financial Services 3 days later, entry-level analyst work that paid $52,000 annually. Enough to survive, not enough to dream. Rebecca posted photos of St. Catherine's campus all August. Gothic buildings, manicured lawns, groups of smiling students in matching sweatshirts. She tagged me in exactly 0 of them. 2 years passed in a blur of spreadsheets and exhaustion. Then came the midnight phone call that should have taught me something but didn't. October 2014, 2:15 a.m. My phone buzzed against the nightstand, Rebecca's name glowing on the screen. I answered before the second ring, heart already racing. She was stranded. Car broken down on some rural highway 200 miles southeast of Seattle. Engine smoking, no cell service except this one spot. Friends long gone after a concert she'd driven to against Mom's advice. I had an interview at 8 a.m. Senior financial analyst position, $85,000 salary. The kind of opportunity that could change trajectories. I was in my car by 2:30. The drive took 4 hours through darkness and thickening fog. Visibility dropped to maybe 15 feet on the mountain passes. My knuckles ached from gripping the wheel. Twice, my tires skidded on wet pavement, and twice I corrected just before the guardrail. I found her sitting on the hood of her dead sedan, arms wrapped around her knees. She climbed into my passenger seat without a word and fell asleep before we hit the highway. I arrived home at 8:40. The interview slot had closed at 8:15. They'd already moved to the next candidate. Rebecca woke up as I parked. Thanks for coming. I'm exhausted. She went inside, straight to bed. I sat in the driver's seat until noon, watching morning light paint the dashboard gold. The mechanic quoted $2,400 for repairs. I paid in full. Rebecca promised to pay me back. She never did, and I never asked. Fast forward to spring 2016. Rebecca graduated from St. Catherine with a degree in communications and no job prospects. 4 months of applications yielded nothing but automated rejection emails. She called me in June, voice small and defeated. Could she stay with me? Just 2 months, she promised, just until she found her footing. She moved into my spare bedroom on a Saturday. The 2 months became 6. I rewrote her resume 17 times, adjusting keywords for applicant tracking systems, crafting bullet points that made her internship sound like executive experience. I coached her through practice interviews, teaching her the STAR method for behavioral questions. I introduced her to contacts from my professional network, people who owed me favors. In December, she landed a position at a marketing firm. $42,000 annually, entry level but stable. She called Mom that night, voice bright with triumph. I finally did it. I finally got a real job on my own. The words "on my own" echoed in my small apartment. I was sitting 3 feet away, but she might as well have been speaking from another planet. 4 years later, at age 25, Rebecca got engaged to Lieutenant Junior Grade David Hammond. They met at some military appreciation event she'd attended with a friend. David was 27, movie star handsome, 6'1" with shoulders that filled out his dress whites like a recruiting poster. Their engagement party happened at a venue overlooking Puget Sound. I arrived early, helped arrange the catering table, made sure the champagne glasses were properly chilled. David found me near the entrance, hand extended for a shake that compressed my knuckles like a vice. "You're the sister, right? What do you do?" "Financial analysis. I work with corporate investment portfolios." His eyes glazed slightly. "Oh, office stuff. That's good." "Stable." He turned away before I could respond, already scanning the room for someone more interesting. Later, Rebecca introduced me to his Navy friends. "This is Sarah, my stable one." Not my sister Sarah. Not my brilliant mathematician sister. Just my stable one, delivered with a half smile that felt like an apology to everyone else in the circle. The wedding came in December 2020. Small ceremony. COVID restrictions still hovering over everything. I stood as a bridesmaid, wearing a $380 dress I'd never wear again. I organized the bridal shower, spending $1,200 on decorations and games and mimosas. At the reception, David gave a speech. I'm lucky to have found someone so independent, so self-sufficient. Rebecca made her own way in this world, and I admire that strength every day. 200 people applauded. I sat at table 8, the furthest from the head table, squeezed between David's second cousin and someone's +1 I'd never met. Not a single person mentioned my name. Not in the speeches, not in the toasts, not in the carefully curated slideshow of Rebecca's journey to this moment. I went home at 9:30, makeup intact, smile practiced. I cried exactly once, quietly, in my car, in the parking garage, then drove home and went to sleep. Something shifted after the marriage. Rebecca didn't just gain a husband. She gained an identity that swallowed everything else. She joined a Facebook group in early 2021, Officer Wives United, Naval Community, 12,000 members, all women married to servicemen, all speaking a language that seemed designed to exclude outsiders. Her vocabulary changed first. She started using phrases like military life and those who serve and the enlisted won't understand. Her wardrobe shifted towards structured shift dresses and designer handbags, Michael Kors, Coach, brands that signaled arrival. During phone calls, she'd drop acronyms without explanation. PCS season, O3 protocol, command spouse events. When I asked what they meant, her tone carried a hint of pity, like I was a tourist asking for directions in a language I'd never bother learning. One conversation in particular lodged in my memory like a splinter. There's this woman in the group who said something that really resonated with me. What did she say? That when you marry someone in the military, you have to elevate yourself to match their rank. You can't act like a civilian anymore. My hand tightened around my phone. What does civilian mean? She laughed, light, airy, dismissive. People who don't understand the culture, it's not their fault. Not everyone is built to serve their country. The implication hung between us like smoke. I was the civilian, the outsider, the one who couldn't possibly understand the sacrifices and honor and duty that now defined her existence. I asked if she wanted to grab coffee that weekend. She said she was busy with a spouse mentorship program. Spring 2023 arrived with a text from Rebecca. Did I want to join her for our annual spa weekend? The tradition we'd maintained for 8 years. Every April, 2 days of massages and face masks and sister talk. I booked Twin Pines Spa immediately, sending her the confirmation. Her response came 3 hours later. Sorry, I have a retreat with the officer wives that weekend. Building Strong Military Families workshop, you understand. I stared at the message. This was the third cancellation in 6 months. I don't understand, actually. This is our tradition. The bubbles appeared, then vanished, then appeared again. You're being dramatic. I'm genuinely busy. 2 weeks later, she posted photos from Hilton Resort Spa. 7 women in white robes, cucumber waters, infinity pool overlooking mountains. Caption: self-care with my officer wife squad, followed by a nail polish emoji. I wasn't dramatic. I was erased. Phone calls became shorter, less frequent. When we did connect, she'd spend 9 minutes talking about base events, about the colonel's wife who said something inspiring, about David's projected promotion timeline. If I mentioned my work, she'd cut in with a question about whether they gave me medals. You're kidding, right? Her laugh sounded hollow. Just seems like corporate jobs should have something to make them exciting. I'd hang up feeling smaller than when I'd answered. October 2023 detonated any remaining illusion that our relationship was salvageable. Rebecca called at 3 a.m., voice shredded. Max was in the hospital, her 2-year-old son, my nephew, pneumonia, severe enough that he couldn't breathe without assistance. Which hospital? Seattle Children's. I'm coming. I'll be there in 6 hours. I grab my keys, a change of clothes, nothing else. The drive from Portland to Seattle normally takes 3 hours. That night, a storm system had moved in, dropping visibility to maybe 15 feet. Snow mixed with freezing rain, the kind of weather that turns highways into accident reports. My car fishtailed twice on the mountain passes. Both times I corrected just inches from the guardrail. I stopped once, gas station, burnt coffee, back on the road. I walked into Seattle Children's Hospital at 9:14 a.m. Rebecca was in the pediatric ICU waiting room. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, hands shaking. She saw me and collapsed forward into my arms. I don't know what I'd do without you. I don't know how I'd survive this. I held her while she cried, while nurses brought updates, while the hours crawled past. Max stabilized by evening. Rebecca could finally breathe. 2 weeks later, she posted a Facebook album titled Max's Recovery Journey. 47 photos. Max with his oxygen tube, Max surrounded by get well cards, Max holding a new stuffed elephant. The caption read, "Blessed to have such a strong military family support system during the hardest week of our lives." 124 comments, every single one praising her strength, her grace, her amazing support network. I scrolled through the album. There was one photo I remembered clearly. Max in his hospital bed, me sitting beside him reading the Gruffalo, his small hand wrapped around my finger. In the posted version, I'd been cropped out, just Max in the book, floating in white space where my body used to be. November arrived with an email, official invitation, formal letterhead, lieutenant to lieutenant commander, promotion ceremony. David was moving up the ranks. The group text went out simultaneously. David's promotion ceremony is next month. Would love to see everyone there to support him. Navy anchor emoji, celebration emoji. Mom replied first, wouldn't miss it. So proud. I typed quickly, I'll be there. Looking forward to it. Rebecca's response came as a heart reaction. Nothing more, nothing less. Just acknowledgement. 3 days later, my phone rang. Rebecca's name on the screen, her voice artificially bright when I answered. Hey, do you have a minute? Sure, what's up? The pause that followed lasted too long. I could hear her breathing, gathering words like ammunition. About the ceremony, it's not really a family event. Every muscle in my body went still. What are you talking about? It's more for direct military connections. Inner circle people. The ones who belong there, you know? I'm your sister. She laughed, short, cold, nothing like the sound I remembered from childhood. And this is his career. It's not about family. This is about rank and the people who understand what that means. Each word landed like a physical blow. The people who understand what that means. Translation, not me, not the civilian, not the stable sister who paid for everything but understood nothing. I don't want you to feel out of place. It's formal, probably more than you're used to. It's a Navy event, not a party. My voice came out flat, every emotion locked behind bulletproof glass. Are you telling me I'm not worthy? I just think it would be more comfortable if it was only people in the circle. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Okay, I hung up. The room was quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, distant traffic outside my window. No tears came, no screams, just a vast empty space where something had been moments before. My laptop was open on the coffee table. An email notification had appeared during the call, unread, waiting. I stared at it for a long time before I finally clicked. The email sat in my inbox like a live grenade. Subject line, official invitation, promotion ceremony, LCDR David Hammond. Sender, Nav Perscom Public Affairs, Navinancht Mill. I'd expected automated distribution, the kind of mass message that goes to every military adjacent contact in the system. Instead, the body opened with my full name and rank. Commander Sarah Mitchell. On behalf of Admiral Robert Chen and the Strategic Intelligence Command, we cordially invite you to attend the promotion ceremony of Lieutenant David Hammond to Lieutenant Commander. In recognition of your distinguished service, leadership, and current standing with Naval Strategic Intelligence, we would be honored by your presence. The details followed in crisp military formatting. December 12th, 1300 hours, Admiral Hall at Naval Base Kitsap. Dress code specified service dress, blue uniform for officers. The final line stopped my breath. Your designated seating, front row, section A, seat 4. Not the back, not the family section, front row. Reserve seating, official recognition. Paul found me still staring at the screen 20 minutes later, laptop balanced on my knees, coffee gone cold on the side table. He read over my shoulder without asking permission, one of the small intimacies of 8 years together. That's an official invitation. His voice carried no inflection, just observation. Yes. Are you going? My finger hovered over the trackpad. The question felt heavier than it should. I don't know. I don't want to hurt her, even after everything she said. Paul sat down beside me, careful not to crowd. But you deserve to be there. I pulled up my journal file, the private document where I processed things too complicated for conversation. Paul knew about it, never asked to read it. I typed while he waited. I don't want to go for revenge. I don't want to embarrass Rebecca in front of 200 people. But I also can't keep disappearing just because I don't fit her image. 4 years ago, I built something that belongs only to me. Not because of Rebecca. Not because of anyone. So why should I hide it? The cursor blinked at the end of the paragraph. Paul's hand found mine. Warm and steady. You've never told me why you kept it secret, the Navy thing. My mind traveled back to August 2019. I'd been 32, sitting alone in my apartment after Rebecca's bachelorette party, the one I discovered through Facebook photos. 12 women on a yacht, champagne bottles catching sunlight, Rebecca's head thrown back in laughter. I hadn't been invited. When I asked about it later, Rebecca's response came wrapped in manufactured surprise. Oh my God, I totally forgot to text you. Why didn't you remind me? That night, scrolling through images of people I didn't recognize, I'd seen an advertisement in my feed. U.S. Naval Reserve, serve part-time, make full impact. I'd clicked without thinking. The application process took 3 months. Background checks, medical exams, aptitude testing. I scored high enough on the ASVAB to qualify for intelligence work, pattern recognition, strategic analysis, exactly the skills I'd honed in finance. Boot camp happened in Illinois. 8 weeks of physical conditioning and military protocol, learning to march in formation and salute properly. I told Rebecca I was taking a consulting contract that required travel. She never asked follow-up questions. The reserve commitment was 1 weekend monthly plus 2 weeks annually. My civilian job accommodated it. Miller and Associates had government contracts and encouraged veteran hiring. I worked intelligence analysis, tracking patterns in classified data streams, briefing senior officers on threat assessments. Ensign first, then lieutenant junior grade within 8 months. Accelerated because of my education and performance metrics. Lieutenant at 18 months. Lieutenant commander at 30 months. Commander at 42 months. 4 years, compressed into a career trajectory that would normally take 15. Paul's voice pulled me back. You still haven't answered why you kept it quiet. I closed the laptop because I needed something that was mine. Something Rebecca couldn't touch or claim or make about herself, and because if she knew, it would become her story somehow. My sister joined the Navy because of David, or I inspired her to serve. I couldn't handle that. What about now? Now she's already written me out of her narrative, so maybe it's time she learns what she missed. I reopened the email, clicked reply, and typed 3 lines. Thank you for the invitation. I will attend. Very respectfully, Commander Sarah Mitchell. My finger rested on the touchpad. 30 seconds of hesitation while my heart rate climbed to 95 beats per minute. Then I clicked send. The confirmation sound was small, insignificant. Everything shifted anyway. Rebecca's first text arrived 2 days later, casual as a weather update. Hey, how's your week going? I left it unread. 4 days after the call, she sent a photo. Silver satin dress, fitted bodice, boat neck. Too much for the ceremony? Getting ready to make David proud, followed by a dancing woman emoji. I opened the message, looked at the image for exactly 3 seconds, then closed it. No response. Day 6 brought an actual phone call. I let it ring 4 times before answering, keeping my voice neutral. Are you mad at me? No. Then why aren't you answering my texts? I'm busy. Silence stretched between us, uncomfortable and unfamiliar. Rebecca filled it the way she always did, with requests disguised as conversation. Can you watch Max next weekend? David and I have this reception thing, and our sitter canceled. The word formed before I could second guess it. No. What? I said no. But you always... Not this time. I ended the call before she could finish the sentence. My hands shook slightly, adrenaline spiking from the simple act of refusal. Setting boundaries felt like violence when you'd spent 15 years erasing them. Mom phoned that evening. Her voice carried the careful, measured tone of someone trying to diffuse a situation they didn't fully understand. Rebecca mentioned you two have been distant. Did she tell you why? She said you've been stressed, that military life is hard for families to understand. My laugh came out sharp enough to cut. That's interesting phrasing. Did she mention she uninvited me from David's ceremony? The pause lasted long enough that I checked if the call had dropped. She probably didn't mean it that way. She meant it exactly that way. She told me I'm not part of the inner circle, that this is a Navy event, not a family gathering, that I wouldn't understand what it means. Honey, you know Rebecca is under a lot of pressure right now. I've been under pressure for 15 years. I paid $18,000 for her college education. I co-signed $64,000 in lease agreements. I drove 6 hours through a blizzard when Max was sick, and she cropped me out of the hospital photos. Another silence, heavier this time. Can't you just let it go for the family? My response came out colder than I'd intended, each word carved from ice. I've been letting things go my entire life. I've been disappearing whenever it made things easier for everyone else. I think I deserve something different than vanishing. I hung up before she could respond. Guilt twisted in my stomach immediately. I'd never spoken to my mother that way, but exhaustion outweighed regret. I was tired of being the one who bent, who accommodated, who made myself smaller so others could expand. That night, I pulled out a box from the back of my closet, old photographs mostly, physical prints from the era before everything went digital. I found the one I was looking for near the bottom. My college graduation, 2012. I stood in cap and gown, diploma in hand, genuine smile lighting up my face. Rebecca was 16, wearing my leather jacket because she'd forgotten hers, despite my reminding her twice. Her arms wrapped around my waist from behind, cheek pressed against my shoulder blade. On the back, in her teenage handwriting, "You're my hero, I love you forever." I traced the words with my fingertip, trying to locate the exact moment. We'd gone from that to this. There was no single event, no dramatic betrayal, Just erosion, years of small choices that accumulated into a chasm neither of us knew how to cross. My phone buzzed. Spam buzzed. Text from Paul. Dinner's ready when you are. I put the photo back in the box, buried it under yearbooks and old birthday cards. Some things hurt more when you look at them directly. The conversation with Admiral Chen happened 3 days before the ceremony. I hadn't planned it. I'd simply shown up to the Strategic Intelligence Office at Naval Base Everett for my monthly drill weekend looking like I'd slept poorly because I had. The Admiral called me into his office after the morning briefing. Robert Chen was 58, second-generation Taiwanese American, 32 years of service etched into the lines around his eyes. He'd commanded submarines before transitioning to intelligence work, and he read people the way others read weather patterns. Mitchell, you look like hell. Thank you, sir. Very observant. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. What's going on? I considered deflecting. Military culture didn't encourage emotional conversations, and I learned to compartmentalize effectively. But something about the weight of the past 2 weeks cracked my usual discipline. Family situation, sir. It's complicated. Family situations usually are. Want to talk about it? I gave him the abbreviated version. Sister married to Navy officer. Told me I wasn't worthy of attending his promotion ceremony. Didn't know I was also Navy. I kept it clinical, factual, emotion stripped out. Chen listened without interrupting. When I finished, he stood and walked to the window overlooking the water. Ships moved in the distance, small and precise against gray horizon. You know what my father told me when I got into the Naval Academy? I shook my head even though he wasn't looking. He said I wasn't smart enough, that immigrant kids didn't belong at Annapolis, that I should focus on something realistic like engineering or accounting. Did you prove him wrong? He turned back toward me. I graduated third in my class. 30 years later, he apologized at my promotion to Admiral. But you know what mattered more than his apology? What? That I never had to apologize to myself. I knew what I'd earned. I knew where I belonged. His opinion was his problem, not mine. The words settled into my chest, warm and solid. Mitchell, you got that invitation because you're Commander Mitchell, one of the best intelligence officers I've worked with in 3 decades. Not because you're related to anyone. Your sister doesn't get to decide your worth. Only you do. But showing up will hurt her. Maybe. Or maybe it'll teach her something she needs to learn. Either way, that's her work to do, not yours. I nodded slowly. Thank you, sir. He smiled slightly. Besides, I already told protocol you're sitting next to me on the platform. Front row, center stage. Can't have you backing out now. The meeting ended with a handshake that felt like absolution. Walking back to my car, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Not because the conflict was resolved, it wasn't, but because someone I respected had confirmed what I'd been afraid to believe. I belonged there. My presence wasn't an intrusion or an act of revenge. It was simply fact. That night, I replied to the official invitation with a formal acceptance. Short, professional, final. Then I prepared. My service dress, blue uniform hung in the back of my closet, cleaned and pressed from the last formal event. I pulled it out, checking every detail. White shirt, stiff collar, black tie knotted in a perfect Windsor. Navy blue coat with brass buttons polished until they reflected light. 2 silver shoulder boards, each carrying the rank insignia, 2 bars and a star. Commander, 05, 2 grades above David's new rank. I laid out the uniform on my bed, like a body, coat, shirt, pants, belt. Shoes. The ritual of preparation felt important, ceremonial. This wasn't about showing off. It was about showing up. Paul watched from the doorway. You need me there? No, this one's mine. He nodded, understanding without explanation. That's one of the things I loved about him. He knew when to support and when to step back. This moment required the latter. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Text from Rebecca, time-stamped 11:43 p.m. Can't sleep. I really want you at the ceremony. I know we've been weird lately, but you're my sister. Please come. I stared at the message for a full minute. 3 weeks ago, I would have melted, would have called her immediately, reassured her, apologized for being distant, would have swallowed my hurt and shown up in civilian clothes, sitting in whatever back row she'd permit, grateful just to be included. But 3 weeks ago, I didn't know how tired I was. I typed a response. Get some rest. Tomorrow is David's big day. Sent it, turned off my phone. The boundary wasn't cruelty, it was preservation. Some bridges, once burned, bent and burned, required both sides to rebuild. I'd done my part for 15 years, now it was her turn to meet me halfway, even if she didn't know it yet. Sleep came in fragments. I woke at 3 a.m., then 4:30, then finally gave up at 5:15. Morning light hadn't touched the sky yet, everything still locked in pre-dawn darkness. I made coffee, drank it slowly, watched the clock crawl towards 6. At 6:30, I began dressing. Each piece of the uniform went on with deliberate care. Buttons aligned, collar straight, tie centered. I pinned my rank insignia with hands that didn't shake. 2 achievement ribbons went on my left chest, National Defense Service Medal, Navy Achievement Medal, small rectangles of colored fabric that represented hours of service most people would never see. I pulled my hair into a regulation bun at the base of my skull, every strand secured, not one loose fiber visible. Minimal makeup. Just enough to look polished, not enough to look decorated. Paul came into the bathroom at 7:10. He didn't say anything, just watched me check my reflection one final time. Then his voice, quiet but firm. You're the strongest person I know. I met his eyes in the mirror. I don't feel strong. That's how you know it's real. I left the house at 7:30 for a 1 p.m. ceremony. The drive to Naval Base Kitsap took 45 minutes without traffic, but I needed the extra time. Needed to sit with what was coming, needed to be certain this was choice, not impulse. The morning was sharp and clear, the kind of December day that makes the Pacific Northwest worth its 9 months of rain. Highway 16 cut through dense forest, evergreens thick on both sides, occasional glimpses of water through the trees. I reached the base entrance at 8:20. The guard checked my military ID, the real one, not the dependent card I'd never needed. He straightened slightly when he saw the rank. Good morning, Commander. I returned his salute, precise and practiced. The gate opened. I drove through onto federal property into the world I'd inhabited secretly for 4 years. The base was a small city unto itself. Housing units, commissary, exchange, schools for military children. Ships docked at the waterfront, massive gray hulls bristling with equipment I couldn't identify. Personnel moved between buildings in uniform, walking with the particular purposefulness of people on official business. I parked near the administrative complex and walked. No particular destination, just movement to burn off nervous energy. The naval base felt different when you were part of it rather than visiting. Confidence replaced uncertainty. I belonged here in a way Rebecca would never understand, despite all her talk of military culture and insider knowledge. At 11:30, I made my way to Admiral Hall. The building was traditional military architecture, functional, imposing, designed to remind people they were in the presence of authority. Inside, the main auditorium stretched wide and tall, easily accommodating 200 people. The stage dominated the front, raised platform, dark wood, American flag and Navy flag flanking both sides. Rows of chairs spread back from it in neat lines, center aisle dividing them into equal sections. I found my assigned seat, 3rd row, center section, 4th chair from the aisle. A small placard rested on the cushion, CDR Sarah Mitchell. Not front row, that would come later when Chen called me to the platform, but close enough that every eye in the room would see me when they looked toward the stage, close enough that Rebecca would have no choice but to notice. I sat down, positioning myself with military posture, back straight, hands folded in lap, eyes forward. Around me, other attendees filtered in gradually. I recognized several faces from intelligence briefings, officers I'd worked with, analysts from other units. They nodded respectfully, some offering quiet greetings. None of them looked surprised to see me. In this world, I wasn't an oddity. I was simply Commander Mitchell, intelligence officer, present for a colleague's promotion. At 12:40, the energy in the room shifted. Side door opening, footsteps on hardwood. David entered in full dress whites, the formal uniform reserved for ceremonies. His height and build made the uniform look like costume design, perfectly fitted to convey authority and competence. He moved with practiced confidence, shoulders back, chin at precisely the right angle. Rebecca followed 3 steps behind. She wore the silver dress from the photo, fitted to emphasize her figure, heels clicking against the floor. Her hair fell in careful waves past her shoulders, makeup applied with precision. She looked like she was attending a gala, not a military ceremony. But then, she'd always understood presentation better than substance. They moved down the center aisle toward the front row, reserved seats for immediate family, positioned where everyone could see them, where David could easily turn and smile at his wife during the important moments. Rebecca's gaze swept the room as she walked, acknowledging people she recognized, offering polite nods, performing the role of supportive military spouse. Her eyes passed over the third row without stopping. She hadn't seen me yet. David and Rebecca took their seats, third and fourth chairs, from the left, front row. Rebecca leaned over to whisper something to the woman beside her, another officer's wife, probably someone from that Facebook group. They both laughed, intimate and exclusive. I sat perfectly still, 2 rows behind and 4 feet to the right, close enough to hear if they spoke louder than a whisper, close enough that when Rebecca finally turned around, our eyes would meet with nothing between us but air and truth. The ceremony was scheduled to begin at 1300 hours, 1 p.m. civilian time. At 12:57, the side door opened again. Admiral Chen entered, uniform immaculate, 3 stars on his shoulder boards catching light. Behind him came a protocol officer and 2 other senior commanders. Chen's eyes found mine across the room. He gave the smallest nod, acknowledgement, reassurance, solidarity. Then he took his position on the stage. At exactly 1 p.m., someone called the room to attention. 200 people stood as one, including me, including Rebecca. The ceremony had begun. Chen opened with standard remarks about the significance of promotion, about the responsibility that comes with increased rank, about the honor of service. His voice carried authority without arrogance, the tone of someone who'd earned respect through decades of competent leadership. David stood at attention beside the podium, expression neutral but proud. Rebecca watched from the front row, hands folded in her lap, picture-perfect military spouse. 5 minutes into the ceremony, Chen paused. What came next wasn't on the printed program. Before we proceed with Lieutenant Hammond's promotion, I'd like to recognize a distinguished guest in our audience. Rebecca's posture shifted slightly, curiosity replacing composure. She glanced around, trying to identify who merited special mention. Chen continued, voice measured and deliberate. We are honored today to have with us an officer of exceptional merit, someone whose service to strategic intelligence has been exemplary, a leader who embodies the values we hold sacred. Rebecca's head turned more obviously now, scanning faces. David's expression flickered with confusion. And a proud older sister. The words landed like artillery. Chen's gaze locked onto me. Please join me in welcoming Commander Sarah Mitchell, Atlantic Fleet, United States Naval Reserve. The room rotated. 200 pairs of eyes swiveled toward row 3, seat 4, toward me. Rebecca's mouth opened. No sound came out. Her face drained of color so quickly I thought she might faint. David's head whipped around, then back to Rebecca, then back to me. His carefully maintained composure cracked like ice under pressure. I stood, smooth, controlled, and every movement practiced. My hat stepped into the center aisle. The click of my dress shoes against hardwood became the only sound in the room. Measured pace, neither rushed nor hesitant. I walked past Rebecca's row. Our eyes met for exactly 2 seconds. Hers were wide, wet, horrified. Mine were steady. I climbed the 3 steps to the platform, stopped in front of Admiral Chen, raised my right hand in salute, fingers together, edge of hand touching my right eyebrow, palm angled down. He returned it with equal precision. Then he handed me an envelope. Official commendation, sealed with Navy insignia. I accepted it with both hands, formal and respectful. I turned to face the audience. 200 people watching. Rebecca, in the front row, mascara already starting to run. David beside her, face frozen in an expression somewhere between shock and embarrassment. I spoke 3 sentences, voice clear, no tremor. Thank you, Admiral Chen, and congratulations to Lieutenant Commander Hammond. You've earned this promotion through hard work and dedication. Professional, gracious, Complete. I saluted once more. Chen returned it. Then I walked to the designated seat on the platform, not back to row 3, but to the first row on stage, directly beside the Admiral. Front and center, visible to everyone, undeniable. The room remained silent for 3 full seconds. Then whispers began, quiet but urgent. I heard fragments as they rippled outward. That's Mrs. Hammond's sister. She's a commander? I had no idea. That's 05, 2 ranks above him. Wait, so she outranks the guy being promoted? Rebecca sat frozen, hands gripping her silver clutch so tightly her knuckles showed white through skin. David stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, trying to salvage dignity from a moment that had been stolen and redistributed. Mom sat somewhere behind them. I'd spotted her earlier near the back. I didn't look for her reaction. Some things were better discovered later in private. Chen resumed the ceremony as if nothing unusual had happened. Promotions proceeded according to schedule. David called forward, new rank insignia presented, oath administered. Rebecca stood to pin the lieutenant commander law bars onto her husband's collar, hands shaking enough that it took 2 attempts. Applause followed, polite, measured, nothing like the enthusiastic response David had probably imagined. The energy had shifted irrevocably. This was still his ceremony, technically, but it was no longer his story. After the formal portion concluded, attendees moved to the adjacent reception hall. Standard military gathering, coffee urns, finger sandwiches arranged on platters, small clusters of people making conversation while maintaining appropriate professional distance. I stood near the windows overlooking the water, holding a cup I hadn't drunk from. Several officers approached to offer congratulations on the commendation, to ask about intelligence work, to make small talk that felt genuine because it existed in a context where I mattered. Rebecca approached alone. David had been absorbed into a group of his peers near the buffet table, accepting congratulations with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. She stopped 3 feet away, close enough for conversation, far enough that our words would stay between us. You didn't tell me. Her voice was hoarse, wrecked from suppressing tears. No, I didn't. You're in the Navy. You're a commander. I'm in the reserves. Have been for 4 years. She looked at the envelope I still held, the commendation that had my name and rank printed across the front. Commander means 05, 2 grades above David. We stood in silence. Around us, the reception continued, people moving and talking, and existing in a world where they didn't have to navigate the wreckage accumulating between 2 sisters. Why didn't you ever say anything? My response came without heat, just exhausted truth. Because you never asked. The words hung in the cold air between us. Because you never asked. Rebecca's mascara ran in black rivulets down her cheeks, each tear carving a path through foundation she'd applied so carefully this morning. Her hands gripped that silver clutch until the metal clasp bit into her palm hard enough to leave marks. I didn't know what else to say. The truth was simple and devastating. 4 years of service, of identity, of accomplishment she'd never bothered to discover because she'd stopped seeing me as anything except functional. The reception continued inside without us. Through the windows, I could see David accepting congratulations, his smile tight at the corners, officers mingling, spouses networking, the careful social choreography of military life proceeding exactly as planned. Except nothing had gone as planned. Rebecca's voice came out ragged, scraped raw. 4 years? You've been doing this for 4 years? Yes. How did I not know? The question landed like an accusation turned inward. I let silence answer it. 48 months of monthly drills, annual training, classified briefings, a whole parallel existence she'd never thought to ask about because I wasn't part of the story she told herself. Her breathing hitched, uneven. I called you my civilian sister. Oh God, Sarah, I made jokes about people who didn't serve while I was serving, just quietly, without making it my entire personality or using it to feel superior. The barb struck home. She flinched like I'd slapped her. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For what specifically? For dismissing me or for getting caught? She opened her mouth, closed it. Tears kept falling, but her eyes held something that looked like actual comprehension. Both. All of it. Everything I've done for the past year, maybe longer, I've been horrible to you. Horrible might be strong. Thoughtless, definitely. Self-absorbed. Absolutely. But you weren't trying to hurt me. You were just so focused on building your image that you forgot I existed outside of my usefulness. That's worse. The words came out as a whisper. That might actually be worse than if I'd hated you. She wasn't wrong. Cruelty at least acknowledged someone's presence. What she'd done was erasure, making me functionally invisible unless I could serve a purpose in her carefully curated military wife narrative. A gull screamed overhead, harsh and plaintive. The base stretched around us in geometric precision, everything in its proper place, everyone knowing their role. Out here, the hierarchy made sense, ranks determined by merit, promotions earned through demonstrated competence, respect flowing from capability rather than performance. I need air. Real air, not just standing here. I walked toward the waterfront before she could respond. My dress shoes clicked against pavement, regulation pace, muscle memory from drill weekends. The ships grew larger as I approached, their hulls blocking wind and creating pockets of almost warmth. Footsteps behind me, Rebecca following, still clutching that ridiculous purse like a lifeline. She'd left her coat inside. Goosebumps rose on her bare arms, but she didn't complain, didn't ask to go back. We reached the water's edge. Waves lapped against concrete barriers. Rhythmic and indifferent, a maintenance crew worked on one of the destroyers, their voices carrying across the distance in fragments about hydraulic systems and scheduled repairs. Can we really talk, not just apologies, but actual conversation? I kept my eyes on the horizon. What do you want to say? That I've been lost. The confession tumbled out quickly, like she'd been holding it back and finally surrendered. When I married David, I felt like I wasn't anything. Just some girl with a communications degree working at a firm that barely paid attention to me. All the other wives had master's degrees or owned businesses or did important volunteer work. I was just there. The vulnerability caught me off guard. This was younger Rebecca speaking, the one who'd called crying about not getting into her first choice college, the one who needed reassurance before every job interview. That version still existed under all the polish and pretense. So the Facebook group became everything. Suddenly I had an identity, military spouse, part of something bigger than myself, connected to service even if I wasn't serving. But to keep that identity, I had to become someone who fit, and you didn't fit the image. You reminded me of who I really was, regular Rebecca from a working-class family with a sister who had a normal job. I needed to be extraordinary, and you were living proof I wasn't. The logic made sense even as it infuriated me. She'd constructed a persona that required my absence, then convinced herself the construction was necessary for survival rather than vanity. You forgot my birthday last year. I didn't forget. Her voice broke completely. I remembered, and I didn't call because the wives group had a yacht event, and I thought that was more important than you. There it was, the admission under all the other admissions. I'd been deprioritized systematically and deliberately in favor of people who barely knew her, but it made her feel important. Part of me wanted to walk away right then, let this relationship dissolve into holiday cards and polite distance, the kind of family connection that existed in name only. It would be easier than trying to rebuild from ashes. But 15 years of raising her, protecting her, loving her despite everything, that didn't evaporate just because she'd hurt me. It sat there in my chest like a stone, heavy and immovable. I paid for your college education, $18,000. She looked at me sharply. I know. You told me you'd handle it. I gave up MIT to do it. The color drained from her face. What? Full scholarship, master's program in applied mathematics, tuition, stipend, housing, everything covered for 2 years, worth about $180,000 total. I deferred to help you, then had to decline because I couldn't afford Boston rent on what I had left. Oh my God, Sarah, you didn't ask. That's the theme here, Rebecca. You never asked where the money came from, never asked if I could spare it, never asked what it cost me. You just took it and moved on with your life. I'm the worst sister in the world. The statement was too absolute to confirm, too painful to dismiss entirely. You're not the worst. You're just someone who got lost in trying to be someone else. And in the process, you forgot that the people who loved you were real human beings with their own dreams and limitations. Silence expanded between us, filled only by water sounds and distant machinery. The December sun was starting its descent, painting clouds in shades of coral and deep purple. Can we fix this? Her voice was small, genuinely uncertain. Is there any way to fix what I broke? I don't know. The honesty felt important. I'm exhausted, Rebecca. I've spent 15 years being the person who gives and adjusts and disappears whenever it's convenient for everyone else. I can't do that anymore. I don't want you to. I want to learn how to be better, how to be the sister you deserve instead of the one who takes you for granted. Words are easy. I've heard a lot of words from you over the years. Promises to pay me back, promises to visit more, promises to remember important things. Words don't mean much without sustained action. Then let me show you. Please, just give me a chance to prove I can change. I finally turned to face her fully. She looked destroyed, makeup streaked, hair disheveled from running anxious fingers through it. That expensive dress probably ruined from temperature and tears, but her eyes held something I recognized from childhood. Desperate sincerity mixed with fear. The look she'd get before attempting something difficult but necessary. If we try to rebuild, it happens on completely different terms. No more co-signing, no more emergency loans, no more rearranging my life because yours got complicated. Understood. You need to develop your own identity that isn't dependent on David's rank or that Facebook group. Figure out who Rebecca is when she's not performing for an audience. I will. I'll work on it, I promise. I need to see sustained effort, not just initial enthusiasm. Months of consistent change, not weeks. She nodded, tears still flowing but quieter now. Grief transforming into something more like determination. We stood together in the cold for several more minutes, not speaking, just existing in shared space without performance or pretense. Eventually, she shivered hard enough that I relented. You should go back inside before you freeze. What about you? I need a few more minutes alone. She hesitated at the boundary between staying and leaving, then nodded and turned toward the building. At the door, she paused without looking back. Thank you for coming today, even though I told you not to. I'm glad you were here. Then she disappeared inside, leaving me with water and ships and the weight of decisions still unmade. My phone buzzed. Text from Paul. How did it go? The question was impossible to answer in a text. How did you summarize a relationship simultaneously breaking and potentially healing? How did you explain feeling vindicated and heartbroken and angry and hopeful all at the same time? I typed, complicated. Tell you everything tonight. His response came immediately. Take whatever time you need. I'm here. 8 years together had taught him exactly what I needed. Space without abandonment, patience without pressure. I'd chosen well there, at least. Another text appeared, this one from an unknown number. Then I remembered giving it to Rebecca years ago when Max was born. Her friend Lauren, our cousin who'd always seemed genuinely kind. Saw what happened, Rebecca told me. Just wanted to say I think you're incredibly brave. She needed to see that. Brave. The word settled strangely. I'd felt justified, angry, exhausted, sad, but brave hadn't made the list. Yet, maybe that's what it was. Not fearlessness, but willingness to be seen despite fear. I stayed by the water until sunset painted the sky in impossible colors, orange and pink and purple bleeding together like watercolor. Beautiful in the way Pacific Northwest winters could be when rain paused long enough for light to break through. When I finally returned to the reception hall, most attendees had left. David stood near the exit with a few remaining officers, his smile strained around the edges. Rebecca hovered nearby, subdued in a way I'd never seen at a military function. She noticed me first. Our eyes met across the room. I nodded once, not forgiveness, not resolution, just acknowledgement. She returned it with tentative hope. Admiral Chen intercepted me at the coat check. Mitchell, that was well handled. Not everyone could have maintained that level of composure. I'm not sure I had another option. We always have options. You just made better ones than most people would. He paused, then added more quietly, See you next month, and if you need to talk before then, my door's open. Thank you, sir. The drive home happened in autopilot, highway lights blurring past while my brain processed everything and nothing simultaneously. Overstimulated and numb at the same time, like I'd exceeded my capacity for emotional processing and needed to shut down for maintenance. Paul had dinner waiting, nothing elaborate, just pasta carbonara and salad. He took one look at my face and pulled me into a hug that lasted until my breathing steadied and my shoulders loosened. Over dinner, I told him everything: the ceremony, Chen's introduction, Rebecca's reaction, our conversation by the water. He listened without interrupting, occasionally squeezing my hand when words stuck in my throat. When I ran out of things to say, he asked the question I'd been avoiding: what do you want to happen next? I honestly don't know. Part of me wants to walk away completely. Part of me wants to believe she'll actually change, and part of me knows that even if she does, we can't get back what we had. Maybe you're not supposed to get it back. Maybe you build something new instead, something more honest, even if it's smaller. The wisdom in that felt simultaneously comforting and sad. New meant acknowledging old was gone forever, that childhood Rebecca and adult Rebecca were separate people, that our relationship had died and might be reborn as something unrecognizable. I'm so tired. Paul cleared our plates without comment. Go to bed. Tomorrow will still be there in the morning. I fell asleep within minutes of lying down, deeper than I'd managed in weeks. No dreams I could remember, just darkness and rest. The next morning brought a text from Rebecca. Not casual or performative, this one carried weight. I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I'm quitting the Officer Wives group. Not because you told me to, but because I realized I've been using it as a substitute for having an actual personality. I'm enrolling in community college next semester, marketing and communications, building something that's mine. I know this doesn't fix anything, but I wanted you to know I heard you. I read it 3 times, scanning for manipulation or performance. Found only what seemed like genuine intention. My response took 15 minutes to compose. That's good. I'm proud of you for taking that step. But remember, I need to see sustained change over time, not just initial effort. This is going to take months, maybe years. Her reply was immediate. I know. I'm ready to do the work. Time would prove whether that was true. For now, I chose to believe it was possible without expecting it to be certain. Mom called that afternoon. Can we talk, just the 2 of us? We met for coffee 2 days later at a cafe halfway between our houses. She looked older than I remembered. New lines around her eyes, gray hair she'd stopped coloring. We ordered drinks and sat by the window, neither of us quite ready to begin. She broke the silence first. Rebecca told me about MIT, about the scholarship you turned down to help her. I stirred sugar into my latte, watching crystals dissolve. That was a long time ago. You never said anything. All those years, you never told me what you gave up. What would it have changed? She needed money. I had money. The decision was already made. But I could have helped. Could have worked more shifts, taken out additional loans. Mom, you were already working 2 jobs and barely sleeping. I made the choice I thought was right at the time. She reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. I'm sorry I didn't see the imbalance. I'm sorry I let it continue for so long without noticing how much you were carrying. The apology landed softer than expected, genuine rather than defensive. She meant it. You always praised Rebecca for her independence, but you never acknowledged that I created the foundation that made her independence possible. I was scaffolding holding everything up, and nobody noticed because scaffolding is supposed to be invisible. You're absolutely right, and I'm ashamed it took this long to see it. We sat with that admission while espresso machines hissed and other customers lived their own complicated family dynamics around us. What happens now between you 2? I don't know. Rebecca says she wants to change. I'm willing to let her try, but I won't go back to being her crisis manager. The whole dynamic has to be different. It will be. I'll make sure. Mom, this isn't your job to fix. Rebecca and I are adults. We have to work this out ourselves. She nodded slowly. I just hate seeing my daughters hurt each other. Sometimes hurt happens when people who love each other grow in different directions. The question is whether the love is worth the work of growing back together. Is it for you and Rebecca? I considered that carefully, weighing resentment against history. Ask me again in a year. Spring arrived with Rebecca's enrollment confirmation. Community college, marketing program, part-time schedule around her responsibilities with Max. She sent photos of textbooks, syllabi, her first assignment, small updates that didn't demand response, but offered evidence of follow-through. I responded when I had energy, sometimes with encouragement, sometimes with just an emoji, sometimes not at all. The inconsistency was deliberate. Her progress was hers to own, not mine to validate. In March, she asked if I wanted to meet for coffee. Just us, no agenda, no expectations. I waited 3 days before saying yes. We met at a neutral cafe neither of us had visited before. She arrived exactly on time, wearing jeans and a plain sweater instead of the designer outfits I'd grown accustomed to. She looked younger somehow, or maybe just more real. "How have you been?" The question sounded genuine rather than obligatory. "I'm all right. Work's busy. How are classes?" "Hard but good." I forgot how much I actually enjoy learning when it's something I choose for myself. We talked for 90 minutes, not about the past, not about reconciliation, just present tense life. Her courses, my latest project, Paul's work, Max's preschool adventures. Conversation that felt almost normal if you didn't examine too closely the careful distance we both maintained. As we gathered our things to leave, she spoke quietly. "I know we're not fixed. I know it's going to take a long time, but I want you to know I think about what you said every single day." "Which part?" "That I let other people define my value instead of building my own." "You were right. I'm working on that now." "Good." We hugged briefly, awkward but sincere. Progress measured in millimeters rather than miles. May brought her community college graduation, associate degree, nothing monumental but meaningful nonetheless. She invited me to the ceremony. I went, sat with Mom and David and Max, clapped when Rebecca's name was called. Afterward, she introduced me to professors and classmates without qualifiers. "This is my sister, Sarah. She's a commander in the Naval Reserve. I'm really proud of her." The words were simple but seismic. Recognition without resentment, pride without performance. My birthday in August arrived with something unexpected. A handwritten card in the mail. Not email, not text, but actual stationery with careful penmanship across 2 full pages. "Sarah, I can't reclaim the time we lost or erase the hurt I caused, but I want you to know what I've learned this year." I was terrified of being ordinary. After marrying David, watching other wives excel at careers or volunteer work while I had nothing to show, I latched on to being a military spouse like it was a life raft. I thought if I could be the best wife, the most devoted supporter, the perfect military family representative, then maybe I'd finally matter. But I built that identity by erasing you, the person who actually made me matter my whole life. You raised me when Mom couldn't. You gave up MIT so I could have St. Catherine's. You were the scaffolding holding up my entire existence, and I repaid you by pretending you didn't exist. I'm learning to build my own identity now. Not as David's wife or an officer's spouse or anyone's anything, just Rebecca. It's harder than I expected. Some days I still want to fall back into performance mode, but I'm trying. I'm proud to have you as my sister, not because you're a commander, though that's incredible. Not because you're successful or stable or any of the labels I used to diminish you, but because you're Sarah, the strongest, most patient, most genuine person I've ever known. Thank you for not giving up on me even when I gave you every reason to. I love you, Rebecca. I read it sitting at my kitchen table, tears running unchecked down my face. Paul found me there 20 minutes later, card still gripped in both hands. Good tears or bad tears? Both kinds at once. He kissed the top of my head and left me to my complicated feelings. I called Rebecca that evening. "Got your card. Thank you." Did you mean what you wrote?" "Every word. I wouldn't have sent it otherwise." We talked for 47 minutes, the longest conversation we'd had in years, where she asked more questions than she answered, where she listened more than she spoke, where space existed for both of us to be fully present. It wasn't complete healing. That would take longer than a single phone call or semester of classes or heartfelt letter. But it was movement in the right direction, which was more than I'd had 6 months ago. November brought everyone to Mom's house for Thanksgiving. Rebecca helped cook without being asked, complimented the food without making it about herself, asked Paul about his nonprofit work, and actually listened to his answers. Small changes that added up to something significant. After dinner, she found me on the back porch. I got a job offer. Marketing coordinator at a local firm. $54,000 salary. That's wonderful. And I want to pay you back, the $18,000 for college. I shook my head. Keep it. Save it for Max's education or your own future. But I owe you. You don't owe me money. You owe me continued effort at being present, honest, and genuine. That's worth more than any dollar amount. She hugged me then, fierce and sudden. I'm going to keep trying. I won't stop. I know you will. December arrived quietly. 1 year since the ceremony that had shattered and potentially saved our relationship. I marked it privately sitting in my office at Naval Intelligence, looking out at water and ships moving across the horizon. My career had continued upward, commander confirmed, new responsibilities assigned, respect earned through demonstrated competence. Rebecca and I spoke every 2 weeks now, a rhythm that felt sustainable, connected without being enmeshed. We'd never recover what we lost: the innocence, the uncomplicated affection, the assumption that family meant unconditional support, all gone. But what we were building felt stronger precisely because it didn't rely on nostalgia. We were choosing each other deliberately now, with clear boundaries and mutual respect. My phone buzzed. Text from Rebecca. Max keeps asking when Aunt Sarah is coming to visit. No pressure if you're too busy. I smiled at the caveat, the acknowledgement that my time belonged to me. Typed back, I'd love to see him. Send me some dates that work. Her response came quickly. Thank you for not giving up on us. I wrote, we're family. We keep showing up and figuring it out. Simple words that meant something different now. Family wasn't an excuse for bad behavior or license for infinite forgiveness. It was commitment to keep trying, keep choosing each other despite difficulty. Evening light slanted through windows, painting my desk amber and gold. I thought about the past year, the ceremony that forced truth into open air, the months of careful reconstruction, the slow building of something new from broken pieces. I'd spent 15 years trying to prove my worth to someone who wasn't looking, giving away money, opportunities, pieces of myself, believing accumulation would eventually matter enough for her to see me. But worth doesn't work that way. It doesn't come from other people's recognition. It comes from knowing what you're worth and refusing to negotiate it away for someone else's comfort. Rebecca and I would probably never have what we once did. Too much damage, too many years of erosion, but we might build something better, something constructed on truth instead of performance, respect instead of resentment, choice instead of obligation. And if this fragile reconstruction collapses, I'll survive that too. Because I'm not the invisible sister anymore. I'm Commander Sarah Mitchell, intelligence officer, partner to a good man, daughter to a mother learning to see clearly, sister to a woman trying to grow. I'm worthy, not because anyone else says so, but because I know it. The ceremony gave me a platform, but the real power came from choosing visibility over disappearance. From understanding that the person who needs to see you most clearly is yourself. Some people spend entire lives waiting to be seen. I spent 15 years that way before learning. You teach people how to treat you. I'd been teaching Rebecca that I was infinitely available, endlessly flexible, fundamentally optional. It took breaking to learn I could rebuild. It took disappearing to learn I could choose to be seen. Outside my window, the ships in the harbor caught final rays of sunlight, hulls gleaming against darkening water, strong and solid and exactly where they belonged, just like me.